YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, back on Total War Warhammer. I've got another replay for you, and a user submitted an army to me that looked a little something. Well, he submitted a bunch of replays, but then they did a hot fix and his replays wouldn't work well. He had sent me so many replays with this army, and it was an interesting idea. I haven't seen it very often. It looks something like this. I'm not going to recreate it exactly, but I'm going to do mostly a recreation here. He took these dwarf warriors, give me just a second, and he triple gold chevron them, and basically what that does is it drives their leadership and melee defense way up, which makes them a little harder to break. And then I believe he was rocking 5 rangers. No, it had to be 4 because he was rolling with 3 organ guns. So his build was either that, you know, you could honestly even do something like this and get even more rangers. It was something like this, where he had a ton of rangers, very few highly chevroned infantry, a rune lord and a rune smith, and the idea was that he was going to attempt to do so much missile damage that his opponent would die really before the infantry battle really even came into play, and that he could make the infantry battle last long enough with the high leadership that these spread out skirmishers and stuff could do. Now I'm going to use a slightly modified version of it. Since I couldn't get his replays to work, I wanted to at least show you all the idea of what he was trying to do with his army, and so I used it in a battle here against the Empire, which is what he thought it was best against. I added a goblobber so that the Empire really couldn't outrange me with its own artillery, and thank goodness I did, because you can see a Hammer of the Witches and a great cannon. My opponent does have 1 handgunner, but you'll notice that his infantry pick is quite odd, as is his choice of heroes. And all 3 of those Empire captains are going to be mounted on Pegasus, so it's very odd. Now I also added 5 miners by not chevroning up all the dwarf warriors, so I figured that would be better than having the chevron dwarf warriors, because the miners could keep stuff away from my skirmishers for longer. Wow, that's how you bisect a Dawi right there, apparently, with a great cannon of Nuln. So I'm going to use my goblobber to hit the enemy cannon unit, and you can see I got a massive hit on it right away. And it's not going to take long for me to rout this great cannon. The goblobber's very, very good at it. And now I'm going to switch targets to the Hammer of Witches, which is on the other side. I was trying to hit the enemy lord with my organ guns, thinking that he's such a big target and he was sitting still that it might be effective, but they actually just miss him a lot. So I go ahead and change the target of the organ gun to the cannon, the Hammer of Witches over here, and my opponent sees that he's losing the artillery fight, and he's going to start rushing his flying units forward. Well, he can't see my rangers, but you better believe he can now. So here comes the incoming volley, and you know, that kind of makes him turn around for a second, which is, I think, clearly the reason why the original user tried to make his army this way. And I'm just not hitting the Hammer of Witches for crap right now. I don't even know what my guys are firing at, to be honest. I thought they were aimed at the hammer. No, this one's still firing at the wrong cannon unit, so yeah, I've made some mistakes there in micro. Letting the Hammer of Witches fire away at me, which is probably not real smart, because he's managed to destroy 1 of my organ guns. Yeah, look at this terrible misclick decision here, but hey, at least we got rid of that cannon. So my opponent decides he's going to regroup his flyers and go ahead and come back in, feeling somewhat obliged to do so here since I hold such a significant ranged advantage. He's going to take terrible damage on the way in from all of my rangers. And this does lure all his units into the ground, where I'm going to just basically start mobbing him with miners as the situation dictates. I was a little bit slow because I was busy mobbing this Altdorf Griffite over here. And the Altdorf Griffite's good, but up against 3 or 4 units of infantry, it's going to wither away. And again, here comes, we're just going to start overwhelming the enemy leadership with big numbers of cheap infantry. His infantry really doesn't stand a prayer of punching through the center of my dwarfs, so it's working quite well for me right now. I'm focusing ranger fire and then chasing the general of the Empire with all the miners, and it is quickly taking its toll. So I think here my opponent just made a really bad army choice. He doesn't have the right troops. Like, he brought nothing to pierce armored infantry with. you can't really accomplish that with flying Empire captains. So he really needed something better. And if he wanted to bring artillery, I mean, the Great Cannon's not bad. And I guess it has the range, but I almost wonder if something like, I don't know, the cannon can be okay versus dwarves, but it's risky because if the dwarves take the Goblobber, they're going to win. They'll win that artillery duel because the Goblobber destroys leadership. So again, you can see he's not going to break through my initial Dwarf Warrior line, which normally Dwarf Warriors are not all that great infantry, but against the Empire they're a lot more of a threat, because really great swords are the only thing that can, you know, consistently beat them head to head. Flagellants are sometimes a decent choice for the Empire, but against the Dwarves, not so much. Dwarves just have too much armor, and then Flagellants are very exposed to this type of thing too, where you can see on the approach here they're going to take some skirmish fire from my Rangers, and they'll do some pretty good damage to them. You can see a bunch of them dropping before they even get in combat, and then a Wrath and Ruin. So you can see the Flagellants over halfway dead before they even get into combat. The Empire General is forced back, and he's still taking fire. And as expected, my Dwarf Infantry is holding strong. My Runesmith is buffing up his army. Or, sorry, my Rune Lord. My Runesmith is also fighting away enemies. Yeah. Empire captains are pretty decent, but they're just not good at trying to clean out that many troops. Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are doing good. They're getting quite a few kills, and the handgunners that he had, I have so many infantry that I just chased him down. He let them get caught and didn't have to, but I was able to chase him down. He does get a nice rear charge there with the Alt-Dwarf Griffites. I'm actually surprised it didn't terror out the miners, but I think it's the power bar and the few numbers of the Griffites that makes it to where that doesn't happen. And then I'm just going to pour in even more miners to continue to overwhelm my opponent over here. See his Alt-Dwarf Griffites are about to reroute, and then everything else he has is going to go. Ooh, that Goblobber. Except for the Tattersouls, which are the last of the Empire units standing. So I'll let you watch them finish it out. I'm going to use the Ruins of Wrath and Ruin on them here soon. Sorry, I'll get you a better zoomed in look here. But yeah. Anyway, what do you all think of the army? Now, obviously it worked here because my opponent's Empire army was ill-chosen against the Dwarves, but I mean, I watched the replays my opponent sent. Some of them were broken. Some of them kind of worked. I could definitely see how 3 organ guns can do enough damage to certain builds, especially since an Empire player probably wouldn't be expecting it, that I could see how it might work. Especially, I mean, they can damage cavalry and armored infantry really quickly. I think you would rather have a map where it's relatively open in order to do that. Doing this on an extremely hilly map or an extremely wooded map might be ill-advised. So, yeah, something to consider there. So I did try it on this map, even though there was quite a bit of terrain, just because I knew there was relatively flat spot in the middle. But I am curious to see your thoughts on whether or not you think something like this can be feasible. I was just really interested in it because he made organ guns work a few times. And it's kind of cool to see people using the organ guns. They're slightly lesser range than typical artillery. Leaves them at a disadvantage sometimes when you get into a ranged fight, but they do significant damage to ground targets that are armored, assuming that they have an easy time hitting them. So it's more like a really large target or a full infantry unit. That would be what they are going to do better against. But anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. Tell me what you think of the build. I'll see you next time in a Total War Warhammer online battle.